Hey folks, today we're going to be discussing basal cell carcinoma, which is a type of skin cancer. We're going to talk about some of the causes, the risks, and treatments for this skin cancer. So as I said, basal cell carcinoma is a type of skin cancer, and skin cancer can actually be broken down into two categories, melanoma and non-melanoma. Melanoma skin cancers, which we can see images of in the bottom right-hand side, result when the melanocytes, the cells that produce pigment in our skin, becomes mutated for whatever reason, some external factor affects the DNA or whatever. They become mutated and they begin to overproduce melanin. They begin to multiply rapidly and grow aggressively and take ground where they shouldn't, invade where they shouldn't. This is the type of cancer that can metastasize and hit other parts of the body and cause problems elsewhere. So it's actually very risky to have this type of melanoma, this type of skin cancer. Non-melanoma skin cancers, on the other hand, are not as dangerous. They don't tend to spread, but they are caused by some of the same factors. What happens is, again, you have some DNA being mutated, and as a result, you have something growing rapidly out of control and posing a problem for the body. However, this is very, very specifically not melanocytes that are mutated in non-melanoma cancers. It is epithelial tissue, epithelial skin cells in the basal layer. These are the types of, this type of cell gets mutated by light or whatever and causes a problem for the body later on. So again, as I said, when cancers occur, DNA gets mutated from external factors, for example, UV light. And either that base gets changed, or there's an addition or a deletion, whatever, the DNA gets mutated, the enzymes and organelles that are responsible for excising these DNA or lysing the cell fail to function properly, and as a result, this cell manages to survive and also manages to reproduce. And it reproduces rapidly. It creates a tumor, in fact. There's another way you can get basal cell carcinoma, which is basically called Gorlin syndrome. When you have Gorlin syndrome, it means you've basically been passed down some of the defective DNA, and in your basal layer, keratinocytes will form, and that's where your basal cell carcinoma will arrive. It's genetic disorder, something you gain just from having it passed down. It's inheritable. Some of the symptoms of basal cell skin cancer are listed by the National Institutes of Health on their government-based website. It's that they may grow slowly and are usually painless. They might just be a bump that is pearly, waxy, white, light pink, flesh-colored, brown. Strange things. But in some rarer cases, you might actually have a skin sore that bleeds easily, a sore that just doesn't heal, oozing or crusting spots in a sore, a scar-like sore without having injured the area, irregular blood vessels in or around the area, or a depressed sunken spot in the middle. And so those are just some symptoms of from the National Institutes of Health. So we look on the upper left-hand side right here. We see in a more technical image of basal cell carcinoma, and we see where it is and what it looks like on the face, on the body. And then we look to these two real-life examples on the right-hand side. It's a little strange, honestly. It doesn't look as harmful as one might think. It might look like just a basic pimple or whatever. But remember, folks, this is a tumor, and this is something that we want removed. It's not something we want on our body. It's not something that's natural in our body. It's something that ought to be removed, and is something very strange. This is a cancer. This is a tumor. Again, it's a big deal. So if you want to know whether or not you have basal cell carcinoma, you can undergo one of two processes. You can either have a biopsy. You can have one of two types of biopsies. You can have a shave biopsy or a punch biopsy. Now, a shave biopsy, we see a diagram of that on the lower left-hand side. It's basically where the doctor will remove a layer of the epidermis and a part of the layer of the epidermis and dermis layer just by peeling it off your skin, and he will take that for testing. On the lower right-hand side, we see punch biopsy, which is where the doctor will basically poke a hole in the skin, go into it, and pull out just a column of cells, essentially. It'll include the epidermis, dermis, subcutis, all that. So now, once you've confirmed that you have basal cell carcinoma, there are several treatments that you can go through. You could have it cut off through the curettage and dissation method, or through the surgical excision method. Both procedures are preferred, which because basal cell carcinoma tends not to be very invasive and very much of a problem. Most doctors will just recommend the curettage method and will basically take a device called a curette, numb the location of the basal cell carcinoma, leave you awake while this entire process is happening, and just cut the skin off. They'll take the tumor out, and you'll be good to go. It won't come back. Surgical excision is a bit more of an invasive process, but again, it's a similar concept. You just cut it off. Some doctors may recommend a cryosurgery or a radiation surgery. In the case of a cryosurgery, they'll basically have it frozen off. Radiation surgery, they'll have it radiated off. This is a more complicated process, and maybe for if you have the basal cell carcinoma a little deeper into the dermis layer. But in most circumstances, this is necessary. Most micrographic surgery is actually a new type of surgery that they've introduced for basal cell carcinoma, and essentially what happens is they do it very precisely. They remove the tumor very, very precisely, and it's again, process, a surgical process where it's cut off. So it's very, very similar to the two above. It's just more precise, and it's more for deeper basal cell carcinoma levels. So, although in most cases, doctors will recommend just having it cut off, and that's what they do 90% of the time. It's huge success rate, all that stuff. But hey, maybe you decide not to get the basal cell carcinoma tumor removed. It's just a little. I wouldn't understand why you do that. It's honestly not that smart of an idea, just because although it's not very risky, there are some risks associated with it, and it's better just to have it cut off. See, the thing about basal cell carcinoma is that although it doesn't spread, it can dig deep into your dermis layer and start to affect your nerves and muscles. It can kill sensation in certain areas and really start to affect muscle. So it's not a recommended thing to keep around. In fact, you should probably get that removed as soon as possible. So just to recap briefly, we talked about how there are two types of skin cancers: melanoma and non-melanoma. Basal cell cancer is a type of non-melanoma cancer. It occurs as a result of UV light or Gorlin syndrome, which is an inheritable trait. The way to diagnose it is through one of two types of biopsy. And again, remember that this tumor may not look like a big deal, but it is still a tumor. It is something that needs to be removed. It is something that has risks. So we should go about the treatment process as quickly as possible. And the treatment processes are still up here. You have it cut off, frozen off, radiated off, whatever. And although it may not seem harmful, there aren't huge risks associated with it. If it digs deep into your skin, if it digs deep into your dermis, it can affect your nerves and muscles. So it's something that you should get removed. So I hope you learned something. I hope you're a little more wary of this cancer, and you will be informed when not when, but if it happens to you.